Yo. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back into the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here to talk about my Week 16 start and sit analysis for the wide receiver position. And quite honestly, after Week 15, I don't even know what to think about this season anymore. I mean, we've got guys on COVID, we got guys hurt, we got guys not performing. I mean, Week 15 has to be one of the worst weeks that we've seen in terms of studs not performing for us. So if you were in the playoffs, hopefully you were on a bye. If you had a must-win matchup, hopefully you squeaked it out. Maybe your opponent had less luck than what you did at this point. But we'll see what happens here in Week 16. It's definitely going to be a rocky road the rest of the season, I think. But as far as our performance from last week goes, we're not even still fully sure yet at this point, because as I'm recording this, we still have 2 games on Tuesday night. Now, normally I record this video on Monday, but then I had to wait until Tuesday to do it. It's just, Listen, we're adjusting the best that we can right now. As of right now, I'm not going to put up what my percentage was from last week. I will do that maybe over like in the rankings video later in the week when the games are done with. As of right now, Jake told me I'm sitting at about 71%. I could still go up or down a little bit depending on how the Tuesday games go, but I don't want to jump the gun here. There's still a lot of receivers going tonight that really could change up what that percentage looks like. So we'll talk about that later in the week. But for now, we're going to have to hop on over and start talking about what we've got going on with the matchups. So let's go into Thursday Night Football first. Thursday Night Football this week is going to be San Francisco at Tennessee. For the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to have Ayuk and Deebo Samuel both as starts this week. I mean, Ayuk last week, back to only 2 targets. Really, Kyle Shanahan? Like, come on. Let's keep him going. Let's keep him going, okay? Let's not fall back to where we were at the beginning of the season. Let's keep Brandon Ayuk on pace here. Deebo Samuel, again, I love how they're using him right now as a running back, wide receiver, in the slot, out wide, all over the place, end arounds. I mean, I talked about it in a video this offseason about how that could potentially help the 49ers, and whew, they've really been doing it. So glad to see them getting really creative with Deebo. And Jennings, I mean, he stole a touchdown last week, but he's not been consistent enough to be considered a start this week. For the Tennessee Titans, I mean, at this point, I've got Nick Westbrook-Ikhine as a start, but that's going to depend. Now, A.J. Brown yesterday was activated or reactivated within that 21-day window for him to return. So essentially what that means is he's been taken off the IR. He's got 21 days now where he can practice, but he doesn't have to play. And then if he can't make it back, he's got to be returned to the IR at that point. I believe he's going to end up coming back. Now, that might be sped up a little bit because Julio Jones last week all of a sudden dealing with a hamstring injury again. So if NWI is the wide receiver 1, if A.J. Brown can't make it back this week, he had 7 targets last week. So I could see a week where we see some double-digit targets for him. So he would be a start. If A.J. Brown ends up coming back, I'm going to move Nick Westbrook back to being a sit, and I'm going to move A.J. Brown to being a start. Cleveland and Green Bay, and this is going to be another question mark of a game for us because Jarvis Landry still has not come off COVID as of this point. Now, there is potential he could come back this week, and it sounds like he is trending in that direction. So if he ends up playing this week, it's going to be a start going up against Green Bay. Donovan Peoples-Jones at this point, it's going to be a sit, but it could change. Number one, if for some reason Jarvis Landry doesn't come back, then we're going to have to look at Donovan Peoples-Jones as being a start. But also Jaire Alexander is a big question mark. He's been really close to returning for the Packers, hasn't quite made it to that point yet, but he could literally return at any point. If he comes back this week, he's probably going to be on DPJ, and that's not going to be good enough for me to want to play him. However, if he ends up missing and Jarvis Landry is out again, heck, even if Jaire Alexander ends up being out, I might end up listing DPJ as a start. So Landry is a start as of right now. Unless he's out, then he's a sit, obviously. For DPJ, if there's no Jarvis Landry and no Jaire Alexander, he's definitely a start. If there's no Jaire Alexander, but there is Jarvis Landry, we'll talk about that one a little bit more. Now, for Green Bay, make sure you check on the rankings. For Green Bay, Davante Adams, Allen Lazard, they're both going to be starts, but MVS is going to be out. He is on the COVID list as of right now. No telling if he could end up making it back. Probably not, since they play a little bit earlier in the week. So right now I'm going to move forward under the anticipation that he will not end up being back, since he was just placed there on Tuesday. For Allen Lazard, though, this is a really, really good opportunity for Allen Lazard. I think working in the slot, especially when you have Myles Garrett, who is going to be questionable this week. We'll see if Jadeveon Clowney can come off the COVID list from last week. But if those guys are going to be good to go this week, pressure under Aaron Rodgers, who's had some trouble moving around, looked a little bit better last week, obviously, but has had some trouble moving around with that foot. Getting the ball out quickly is going to be really, really good for Allen Lazard. So this could be a great game for him to kind of bounce back after that dud we saw last week. But if there's no MVS, then Allen Lazard probably moves back out wide. Maybe they play Amari Rodgers out wide a little bit. We'll have to wait and see kind of what that happens. But obviously, Davante Adams, we're never sitting him. Indianapolis at Arizona. Arizona's going to be looking to bounce back, man. What a pitiful performance against the Lions. I mean, come on. Arizona, why you got to do me like that? Why you got to do me like that? I need Detroit to get the first overall pick. I don't want to deal with second, third, fourth, or whatever it is. Anyway, Michael Pittman, he's going to be a start for me going up against Arizona. He was ejected last week. There's going to be a fine, no suspension, so I wouldn't worry about that. And I'm not banking on any of the other guys, Hilton, Pascal. I mean, I think right now, Indianapolis, their blueprint is play really good defense, run the football with Jonathan Taylor, and, put Carson Wentz in a position to make fewest mistakes as possible. So I don't really love the upside of any of these guys, but Michael Pittman has the floor every single week as the wide receiver one in this offense. For the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, Christian Kirk, big game last week. Love him when he's getting consistent targets. I mean, he was kind of that start for me last week, a little bit of that dark horse with no DeAndre Hopkins. AJ Green, a disappointment last week, but I would expect a bounce back performance, not only from him, but this entire offense against Indy this week. Detroit at Atlanta, and this is one that we're continuing to monitor because Jared Goff could still potentially start this week. It's not out of the question. He is vaccinated from what I am now hearing, so he could be back by the end of the week and be able to play. Now, Josh Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown, both of these guys are going to be starts for me as of right now. There's no TJ Hockenson, we know, the rest of the season. DeAndre Swift is still, not really on the cusp of returning. Could, but doubt it. So for me, these guys right now are getting more than enough targets, especially if we don't see like Jamal Williams return again either. They're getting so many targets right now. They're really, really safe starts, especially in a matchup against Atlanta. Josh Reynolds, the big play guy, another big touchdown for him last week. Amon-Ra St. Brown setting a record, a rookie wide receiver reception record for the Lions, which is insane to think about considering some of the really good wide receivers that they've had there. So both of these guys are going to be starts for me. For the Atlanta Falcons, Russell Gage is going to be a star. He's a top 10 wide receiver since week 12. Really has come on strong at the end of the season. For those of you that listened in my waiver wire episodes and I talked about potential opportunity and how that can translate to fantasy points, y'all picked up Russell Gage, y'all have held him, and now you're able to play him, and he's helping you in your fantasy playoffs. Baltimore at Cincinnati is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Make sure if you're looking for presents for that special someone in your life this holiday season, whether it's something to throw under the tree or put in the stocking, you head to manscaped.com. And when you get everything listed and put into your cart, you use code word headliners at checkout. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping. So make sure that you do that. Head over to manscaped.com. Appreciate our friends over there re-upping with us and being sponsors again this season. So why is this my Manscaped must-watch matchup? Because there's so much good talent in this game. And there's a lot of uncertainty. With Baltimore and Cincinnati, it could end up turning into one of those shootouts where these guys are going back and forth, lots of scoring. It could end up turning into a defensive struggle. Which one are we going to get with these two teams? For me right now, the question around Baltimore is kind of Lamar Jackson. Is it going to be him or Huntley? Huntley, more than good last week, though. Marquise Brown coming off a really high target performance, but there wasn't a whole lot of yards. He had like 6 catches for 40-something yards, so not even hitting 10 yards per reception, which is odd. But in this game against Cincinnati, Brown has a little bit of a lower ceiling this week for me. I think he's going to be matched up with Awuzie. That could lead to more targets for Rashad Bateman, and that's why I'm going to put him as a start this week. I think if Mark Andrews is really the focus, because he's the number one target right now, he's the guy. If he's the number one focus from Cincinnati, and they are giving a lot of attention to him. And then Marquise Brown is, seeing, Awuzie and getting a lot of attention himself. For Baltimore to win this game, they're going to have to spread the ball around a little bit. They're going to have to get Rashad Bateman going. And I think that would be the key to them winning against Cincinnati this week, is if they can get Rashad Bateman a big game. So I'm going to have him as a start this week. For Cincinnati, Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. I mean, this was a tough matchup last week, obviously, against Denver. But Baltimore has been dealing with a lot of injuries, a lot of COVID issues in the secondary. Who's going to be back this week? Who isn't going to be back this week? Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, both of these guys, they have so much upside. It's hard to sit them on a weekly basis. Chase definitely has come back to earth since the beginning of the season, but I think a lot of that has to do with how well T. Higgins has been playing. They haven't really needed to force the ball to Ja'Marr Chase the way they kind of did at the beginning of the year when they had some injuries and inconsistencies to start. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just about getting this team in a groove. If Baltimore can come out and really play well, also got to keep an eye on Joe Mixon. He's dealing with an ankle injury. If Baltimore can come out and play well and really push Cincinnati to have to pass the ball a little bit, Chase and Higgins will both be start. I kind of want to put Boyd as a start, but he's been the guy that, he has some good performances here or there, but nothing that really has been exciting for me to start him on a weekly basis. The LA Rams at the Minnesota Vikings is going to be one heck of a matchup. And the man that is on the thumbnail of this video, Cooper Kupp, coming off a huge game against the Seattle Seahawks and expected to continue against Minnesota, who gives up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Now, on top of that, Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham Jr. Now, at the time of this recording, during Tuesday Night Football, weird to say that, neither of them had done a whole lot of anything against Seattle. But don't let that scare you away from potentially playing them again this week. They're going up against a Minnesota secondary that has gotten thrashed by wide receivers all season long. I fully expect them to do the same thing. As far as Minnesota goes, I mean, Justin Jefferson, ended up scoring a touchdown, had a great game, but Kirk Cousins just, he didn't seem like he was really rolling last week. We'll see if the Rams can get fully healthy on defense, and if they do, it might make things a little bit tougher, but I'm still not going to be sitting Justin Jefferson. He's been way too hot as of late. The question for me is going to be Adam Thielen. As of this recording, we have not heard whether or not Adam Thielen is going to be ready to go next week. Now, it sounds like he was pretty close this week, but almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. All right. I've had to redo the wide receiver video so many times this week because of all the COVID cases. I'm starting to lose my mind. So for Adam Thielen, as of right now, injured out, doubtful. KJ Osborne is going to be a sit no matter what. Now, if Adam Thielen were to play this week, Adam Thielen will in fact be a start for me. So make sure you keep an eye on the rankings videos for that update. Buffalo's going to be impacted by COVID now as Cole Beasley has tested positive, and as of this recording, who knows if anybody else in that room will end up being a close contact or a positive test as well. Definitely something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on over the next few days. What does it mean as they step out to face New England? Quite honestly, not a whole lot for me, because a lot of those receptions, a lot of those targets, a lot of those routes that Cole Beasley really used to flourish in, and his role inside this offense hasn't meant nearly as much this season as it has in years past. I've talked about it for weeks now. Dawson Knox is kind of that go-to guy. He's obviously back and playing and healthy now. New England is a very, very tough defense. We'll see what happens with it. But for now, since there is no Cole Beasley, I'm going to go with Stefon Diggs and Gabriel Davis as starts. Now, Davis hit New England a couple of weeks ago with that touchdown, so we'll see if they game plan for him a little bit better. But his role's been expanding and expect it to expand even more with no Cole Beasley. And we'll see about Emmanuel Sanders. I'm not even going to put Isaiah McKenzie on here, because even if I had him on here, I'd just list him as a sit regardless of what happens. But we'll see what happens with Emmanuel Sanders' potential. He could come back and be in the lineup this week. We'll see what that means for Buffalo. For the New England side of the ball, really at this point, I'm not really trusting any of these guys. I mean, New England's not going to run the ball 100 times this game like it seems like they did a couple of weeks ago when they played in poor weather. But for me, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers would be the two main guys here. Not really feeling either of those guys, because let's say even if they get like 6 targets, 7, 8 targets apiece, they may only catch like maybe 4, 5, or 6 of them, maybe 40, 50, 60 yards in half PPR formats. It's going to be really tough to hit that mark if they don't score a touchdown, that mark of 10 fantasy points, if they don't score a touchdown. And scoring a touchdown against Buffalo has been really tough this year. They allow the fewest receiving touchdowns by wide receivers in the league. Jacksonville and the New York Jets, and you best believe I'm rooting my butt off for Jacksonville to get a win this week because I need Detroit with that first overall pick again. So for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we're not starting any of them. I mean, come on now. I told you a couple of weeks ago. We're not trusting any of them. I don't care that, well, I do care that Urban's gone. Woo! I don't care that he's gone, though, in the sense of this team could perform better. I'm just not buying it right now. Yeah, I mean, Treadwell has looked decent at times. It is the New York Jets, though. Listen, if you're starting any Jacksonville wide receivers right now, more than likely you're not fighting for a championship anyway. So I'm not trusting any of these guys this week. For the New York Jets, Jamison Crowder will be a start for me. He should get enough targets. It's hard to trust any of the other wide receivers that they have right now. If we get Jamison Crowder 8-9 targets this week, it should be more than enough to get you to 10 points. The Giants of New York versus the Eagles of Philadelphia. I'm going to switch it up there and go backwards with the name. For the New York Giants, I mean, Kadarius Toney would end up being the only start for me, but I don't know if he's going to play this week. So right now, I've got injured out, doubtful on him. That could obviously change, though. Make sure you watch the rankings. If he does play, he is a start for me. I mean, that role that he plays out of the slot that Sterling Shepard would normally play, that's that alpha role for this New York Giants team. I mean, really utilizing them over the middle, yards after the catch, putting them in situations to really win after the catch. I like that. That's the only thing about this Giants team that I like. So as of right now, Toney is listed as out for me because I don't know if he's going to make it back. If he does, though, he is going to be a start. So make sure you keep an eye on that. For the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, I'm still not trusting Devontae Smith. I can't. I'm not seeing enough consistency. He only has 2 games this season over 100 yards. His next closest game is 71 yards. There's been nothing about consistency other than consistently underwhelming this season. And he had a stretch of 2 games where he had 3 touchdowns. Other than that, his only other touchdown came in week 1 at the very beginning of the year. So for me, I can't trust it this week. Tampa Bay at Carolina, and honestly, Tampa Bay is a mess right now. Mike Evans is week to week, possibly out. Chris Godwin isn't going to be back this season. Brashad Perryman is still on the COVID list. Antonio Brown could potentially return this week, but no word has been made on that as of yet. So I don't even know what to do with this team. It doesn't matter right now. Pretend like Tampa Bay doesn't even exist. Come back to the ranking show, and when the week has more clarity, then I can let you know who to start from this team. For Carolina, though, DJ Moore is going to be my only start. We know the volume is going to be there going up against Tampa Bay. I mean, they're not running the ball a lot right now. Speaking of Carolina, I mean, Chuba Hubbard, they're not really doing a whole lot with him. The tight ends aren't getting any work. I mean, Amir Abdullah is getting 4 targets out of the backfield, but that's it. So we know DJ Moore is going to get enough volume. Robbie Anderson, I've got him listed as a sit. He's going to be in my top 50 this week, but I think his floor is under 10 fantasy points. That's why I have him as a sit. But because I have him in my top 50, because I could see the ceiling if he were to score being around potentially 12 to 14 points. The Chargers, the Houston Texans, hopefully the Chargers don't pull in Arizona Cardinals and win or lose to a far less superior team. For the Chargers, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, both of these guys are going to be starts for me this week. The only thing I'm worried about with Mike Williams is the floor at 10 points. Yes, the floor can be 10 points, 100%. But how high does the ceiling go? Because if the Chargers get out early on Houston, they're probably not going to throw the ball as much as I would think. If Austin Eckler ends up being out, that maybe changes things a little bit. But Justin Jackson looked good last week, so they can run with Jackson a little bit. Also, I think Jared Cook gets a little bit more involved this week. So because of that, I like him at a floor of 10 points. I love Allen at a floor of 10 points. We're never sitting Allen. But Mike Williams, kind of a floor at 10 points. It's the ceiling that I'm worried about this week. And for Houston, I'm going to start Brandon Cooks. He's vibing with Davis Mills right now. Back-to-back games of double-digit targets and 100 yards. Cooks kind of coming on strong here in the fantasy playoffs. That could be really great for you owners. For Chicago and Seattle, Darnell Mooney is going to be a start. I mean, Seattle's defense has not been that great this year. They've allowed the second most receiving yards this season to wide receivers. Honestly, at this point, Darnell Mooney, the connection that he has with Justin Fields is just too strong to be sitting Darnell Mooney. And they were so close to having a touchdown last week. Beautiful throw, almost beautiful catch. Just by inches. inches, could have had a touchdown. If Darnell Mooney maybe gets those feet down a little bit quicker, he gets it, but it just didn't happen. And hey, that was still a good throw, but it happens. So Darnell Mooney will be a start for me this week. 7 targets last week. The question is going to kind of be Allen Robinson. Will he end up being back from COVID? If he does, it helps Darnell Mooney a little bit because it takes a little bit of that pressure off of him. But it is Seattle. I'm not worried about it. And even if Allen Robinson does come back, I'm probably not going to be starting him anyway. For the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Lockett was not able to make it back this week. Unfortunately, finding out earlier in the day he was not activated in time to make any type of an impact, and because of that, it just, I don't know what's going to happen with him this week. He was super sick at the beginning. A lot of, some reports were that the effects of getting COVID was just a lot on him. So I don't know if it was just he didn't test negative in time, or he was still showing symptoms, or I don't know what it was. So we'll have to keep an eye on that throughout the week. DK Metcalf, as of this recording, again in that game, hadn't done a whole lot, unfortunately, and that's just kind of the way it continues to be for him. I mean, you can run him out there this week if you want to. I understand why some of you are going to say no, but if you're going to, you got to find an option that is a whole lot safer than what he is. And really at this point, with what we've seen from DK Metcalf, are there a whole lot of guys that you're willing to run out over him? For Pittsburgh and Kansas City, I mean, I know what we're going to be doing on Pittsburgh side of the ball, right? We know who we're going to be starting over there. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. Now, Pat Freiermuth had his 2nd concussion of the year this past Sunday, and I'm kind of hoping he doesn't play this week. Take a week, rest it up, see what happens. So James Washington is going to be I'm keeping an eye on. I'm not going to start him, but I am keeping an eye on him. As far as the Kansas City Chiefs go, Tyreek Hill ended up on the COVID list today. I don't know if he's vaccinated or not. I don't know if he'll get back by Sunday. And if he doesn't, other than Travis Kelce, I really don't know what to tell you about this team. Personally, I don't know if I could start anybody. If you've got to pick up any of these guys to try and start them and your semis, you lost your semi. And I'm not talking about your matchup. Denver at Las Vegas in Denver. No way, baby. We're not doing... I mean, Jerry Jeudy last week. What in the world was that performance? Tim Patrick having a touchdown, but other than that, not doing anything. Cortland Sutton not doing anything. You know what? They aren't going to be doing anything in our lineups because they need to be on your bench. For Las Vegas, we will go back to Hunter Renfrow. Down performance last week, but it's the first one in a while. And I want to make note about Denver. Denver last week shut down T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on the outside. Who didn't they shut down? Tyler Boyd in the slot, and that's where Hunter Renfrow is going to make his damage. Cincinnati's best wide receiver last week, Tyler Boyd, kind of working the same role that Hunter Renfrow will. Hunter Renfrow will be a start. Should be a good game for him. Washington and Dallas. And for Washington, Terry McLaurin able to make it back last week. Now, not a huge game, but he had a couple of big plays. Looked good, looked healthy, coming back from that concussion. So that was good to see. We're definitely going to have him listed as a start this week. For Curtis Samuel, DeAndre Carter, we're going to have both as sits here, as well as Adam Humphries. Humphries, towards the end of the game, was getting quite a bit of targets, but the hope is that Taylor Heinicke will be back this week, and that Gilbert, Humphries connection that we saw on Tuesday night, may not be the same going forward. For the Dallas Cowboys, for me, looking at what they've got right now, CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper are going to be the guys for me this week. Unfortunately, there's just not going to be enough every single week for people to eat. And this past week, Dalton Schultz had a good game, which we weren't betting on because I was betting on a little bit bigger of a performance from the wide receivers. But Lamb, Cooper, and Gallup all had down performances. This week, coming back against Washington, we're going to switch that script a little bit. Dalton Schultz, I do believe, will have a good game. We'll talk about that in the other video. CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, both of those guys, I like them. I do expect them to have big games this week. Fingers crossed, it does happen. Miami at New Orleans, and for Miami, I'd love to start Jalen Waddle this week, but again, I don't know if he's going to come back. He's on the COVID list right now. Keep an eye on it. If he comes back, he's a start for me. Devontae Parker will also be a start as well. Now, New Orleans looked great against Tampa Bay this past week, but they also lost Mike Evans. They also lost Chris Godwin. They also lost Leonard Fournette, all in that game. So, do I give them credit for shutting down Tampa Bay? Yes, but they were missing all of their top weapons. So I'm not going to give them too much credit. Tua's playing pretty well right now. Jalen Waddle, obviously that connection is there. Devontae Parker coming off a really good game. I'm going to list them both as starts. They're going to have to be throwing the ball against New Orleans. Obviously on the road, they're going to have to throw a little bit to keep up with them, more than likely, unless the defense completely shuts down Taysom Hill, which could be a possibility as well. For New Orleans, Marquez Callaway, I mean, if you're looking for a risky high upside play, you could potentially go with him. I don't know if I really trust it, but again, if they have to throw it a little bit this game, Marquez Callaway is really the only guy right now that's getting the targets that would need to be a start. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my Week 16 wide receiver analysis. Hopefully you all are in the playoffs, going towards a fantasy football championship, and hopefully all of this information will help you get there. Don't forget, we've got a lot of things that are fluid right now, a lot of things that are changing, so make sure you watch the rankings videos on Thursday. You gotta watch them on Thursday, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on a lot of information that could be outdated by the time this drops and is seen, and then we get to Thursday. So, ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor. Hit that like button down below if you appreciate the content. In the comments, let me know who your top wide receiver play of the week is. And if you're new here, you got to hit the subscribe button. Stick around for the rest of the season and all off season as well. Appreciate you all tuning into this video. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.